got the dentist in the house today, Randy Jones.
How you doing, man?
Dude, my first memory of us is from Jones.
Yeah.
My first memory of Jones is with you, bro.
Yeah. Honestly, there was a lot of stuff back at Jones, but our time together, that 1 year in physics, Miss Bolaware, that was definitely a fun year. And, between me, you, and, my boy Eli too, like we made some memories that year. But definitely, who'd have thought, that was half our life ago. That was like,
dude, ain't that crazy?
We were like 18 or 19.
Yeah,
man.
because now I did the math the other day. I'm like, I'm over double an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
That does not sit well, but I don't let that define me. But like literally, it's like, dude, you're 39. Or how old are you? 37?
37.
So I got you by a couple years.
Yeah,
it's
you're
like,
so much older than me.
I'm double an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
But I still see myself as one of those guys.
Yeah.
But literally, like, I went to Jones for civil engineering, so I was stuck over there in that area. And then
I remember that.
Was going to go do, civil engineering at State. So I got my basics. So I worked really hard for a year, saved up every dollar. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to be one of these kids that gets to go to school, study, have fun. And that's exactly what I did. And I remember my first day of school. My first class was physics. And I walked in and met you two. And, like, we literally were like,
yeah.
From there on. I know we're not like the closest nowadays, but I keep up with you, dude.
Oh, yeah. Like I say, I'm always on the Instagram, check and see what you up to. Just, seeing somebody kind of doing something similar to what I'm doing and, trying to scale and grow and all that. Like, there's not many people like us. And so it's cool that, we look back, 18, 19 years ago, however long ago it was, and it was just like, we were kids then. We didn't talk about doing what we're doing right now. We were just, trying to get through physics and, living that teenage lifestyle.
Ain't it funny how you only connect the dots backwards?
Yeah.
Like, you can't plan for this.
Oh,
you just got to take the step forward. And then, that's, I want to talk about dentistry, but dude, you're more of a daggum business. How many clinics do you have now? And what's the names of them?
We are at 4 clinics right now. So, Magnolia Smiles Family Dentistry is our brand. That's why I like to use it. Like, this is our brand. This is what we are. Whenever you come here, like, we're going to preach it to our staff. Every single interview that I have, like, this is Chick-fil-A dentistry. Like, when you come in,
so funny.
When you come in, you're going to have that experience, and that's what it is. If that experience is not happening, I want to know about it because we're going to make sure that that's corrected. But we're at 4 locations, and we are in the process now of getting a 5th location. So, my model is just completely different than most. We can get into a lot of that. Back in the day, whenever I come out of dental school, it was like either you owned your own practice or you worked for somebody. And, there's a lot of corporate dentistry and stuff that was going on at the time. And, I don't think anybody in my class was ready to jump head on, like, let's go, open up a practice, buy a practice. I think I was the only one that did. Like, I jumped in, and I had no idea what the heck I was doing. Like, in dental school, they teach you how to do all the dentistry. When it comes to the business, we had one little class. They didn't teach you nothing, and then they just pushed you out and said, go figure it out, So
what inside of you, talk about that for a minute. Like, what inside of you think caused you to, obviously you got some entrepreneurialism in you.
Yeah.
So, like, you had some higher intellectual factors that wanted to create a business. Like, what were your instincts on that?
Probably, with me was that, I was from Waynesboro. That's my hometown. Grew up there. And, coming out of dental school, I was 26 when I graduated dental school. Single, had really no desire to go back to the small town life. And, honestly, I'd never seen $1 in my life. I'd literally just racked up student loan debt. So, you come out of dental school, a couple hundred grand in debt. Nowadays, it's like 300 to 400, but you're 200 grand in debt. And my uncle in Waynesboro was needing to draw like disability. Like, he'd gotten so down, the practice was extremely distressed. 3 employees seeing maybe 10 patients a day was a good day. And I saw that as an opportunity. And in my mind, I was thinking, you know what, I'm going to make this work. I don't know how. And I even talked to like some dentists like in there. Every one of them told me, don't do it. You don't need to go jump into ownership. You need to just go take a job somewhere. And I was like,
because that's what they did.
That's what they did. Or they, they got out in the real world and didn't work out for them. They ended up coming back just to be a professor because, that was, their niche. That's what they needed to do. The real world wasn't good to them. So I come out of dental school and was like, you know what, I'm going to still live in Jackson. Waynesboro's 2 hours away.
Dang.
I'm going to live with my parents 4 nights out of the week, go down there, run that practice Monday through Thursday. Maybe it was 3 nights. It's either 3 or 4 nights. But you're 26 and you're going back and living with your parents and you're going to, own a dental practice. Like I thought I was like, man, I'm like grinding here. But, I remember going in and to buy that practice off of my uncle. He didn't cut me any slack. He was like, oh, your uncle like cut you a deal. No, he didn't cut me a deal.
He needed to retire.
He needed to retire. But I mean, the practice was super distressed. I mean, I was still able to, like in nowadays terms, get it for a steal. So it was like, I think it was $237,000 to buy the practice.
And did he separate it like business, assets, and then inventory?
Yeah. So basically,
a lot of people don't know that when they buy a business, you're buying 3 separate parts.
Yeah. They try to rope it all in. There's all different kind of ways and formulas to try to like actually value a practice. Back in the day, if it was a poor performing practice or a practice going down, you take 60% of collections and then they would divvy it out for taxes and stuff like that. But it was like $237K. And I remember my hand was shaking. Like I was nauseated. I was already $200K in debt. I was going to go another 237. I didn't know what the heck, it was going to play out. But after about 2 or 3 months in, and I was still driving back and forth to Jackson. I did that about 2 years. And after about 2 or 3 months in, I was looking at the bottom line. I was like, all right, all I got to do is make my note. And then this is what my profits are. And then I would go back to Jackson, live with some other, guys I was in, working for somebody, starving, because basically they were having to work for a dentist that they could do the procedure that was handed to them.
And you owned assets.
And I owned an asset, and so it's crazy that, you can buy a distressed practice like that and then turn around and start actually growing it. And then you're, gaining equity in that too.
Where most people would have probably went and bought a house, you bought the practice that would have cost the amount of a house.
Yep.
Still lived the college life, it sounded like, on the weekends.
Yep. And like I said, that was, the biggest thing was doing that. I ended up buying the real estate about 3 months later, too. I went ahead and jumped into that. So I took on another, I think it was 240. No, it was like 290 for the building or something like that.
I was going to say like 240, dude.
I know, I killed it. Like I said, it was it was a great price on the building of it. So I ended up had a 1-car garage in the back of it. I'd work out in, whenever I didn't have a patient at the time, it'd be because it was slow. But because we were growing it.
You should have filmed that, bro.
I did. I'd sneak in the back and if you go to my Instagram, you'll see me, snatching like 255.
So you need to post that. You know how many people would buy into you?
I had like a PR that day. Like it was, I had like 255 snatch in my back garage gym after I saw some patients that day. And
what's in there now?
I actually floored it up and made more ops out of it. And we're in the process now, actually this week, tomorrow, we're expanding off the back of the building, going to double the size of that practice because we're so tight. And it's just 5 ops. And so we're going to go to 8 or 9 ops. And actually, I've got a couple dentists that are going to join me there and move me out of that technician, after 10 years of doing this, 11. I'm going to move out of that, and move more into being, the manager and all of that, and not so much day-to-day grinding, working on patients and trying to manage all the other clinics.
Yeah, when you mentioned your uncle, were you aware whenever you saw him getting distressed and needing disability that like, hey man, if I'm not healthy, like the practice doesn't run?
Yeah. And that's something that
that's a good lesson to learn at that age.
Well, honestly, even right now, for me to, and that's what kind of a little bit led me into naming the clinic Magnolia Smiles instead of just like Jones Family Dental or something.
Right.
I was like, I at that moment knew I was like, I'm going to name this Magnolia Smiles. That way I can replicate this process eventually later. But my goal was like, I'm going to pay down all this debt that I had, which, again, you can look at it one of 2 ways. That's a good thing. You can sit there and not pay down the debt. But in order to leverage yourself for more practices, I needed to get that debt down and then prove that I could do it. And so the first 5 years, I think I paid myself $75K a year, maybe, as a doctor, 75K. I mean, I'd never seen money before. I was living just fine. I was paying rent in a house, living with my parents. But I paid off every bit of my student loan debt, every bit of the building, every bit of the practice. I was sitting there debt free after 5 years there. And
dude, just what you done those 5 years is probably just as valuable as the 8 years of dentistry if you could teach us.
Yeah.
Those kids coming out at that.
And, I try to go back to the dental school and try to, talk to them and explain to them, the importance of owning a practice and, the difference of owning a practice compared to, just working for somebody. Everybody gets all caught up in the debt. I'm like, you got to take on debt to make it. I mean, that's the only way to actually get ahead in life is to actually take on good debt. You know? But it was definitely, a valuable lesson for me. But, and I can get all into the business model and stuff like that with what I do at dentist. I mean, it's that whole old school way of doing things of like, you're going to go work for corporate or you're going to go work for somebody for, commission. I mean, it's flawed. It's like, you can actually work in a practice, have equity in the practice, and actually not have all the responsibility of 100% ownership. And that's what we do.
So you're practicing that right now with the dentists that work with you?
Every clinic that I have, if a dentist works with me, they're going to have an equity ownership opportunity. We do like a trial partnership in a way. After 6 months, somebody's going to be good or not. These rural towns too, kids nowadays, or I say kids, these dentists coming out of school, they don't want to go to the rural towns either. They want to go like work in Hattiesburg or Jackson. So kind of the same thing with you. You did rural towns.
That was my niche, yeah.
You did rural towns, I did rural towns, and it's a big need in those areas, but you got to offer a little bit extra to get those people to go to those places. And that's where, like I said, we set it up to where they have the opportunity to have ownership.
That's cool, dude. So like, how do you find dentists? I mean, that seems kind of painful, especially in rural towns. Do they commute or?
So some of them have to commute. Most people don't want to drive over 30, 45 minutes max. I drive an hour every day, somewhere, because I live in Petal now, which is centrally located to all the clinics. And that was the goal, was to get in the middle of everything and then drive. But yeah, finding those dentists, you got to put yourself out there, doing stuff like this, or actually going to the dental school, taking people out to, dinner, stuff like that. You're actually having to recruit these people, because I'm also battling against all those corporates that are running around, the Aspen Dentals, the Heartlands, the other corporates that are taking over Mississippi right now. It's kind of like when pharmacy went into like Walgreens and all this. All your small mom and pop pharmacists disappeared. The same thing's kind of happening in dentistry right now.
Are they assuming a lot of the local brands?
They buying anything they can get their hands on. Sad part about corporate dentistry is they will typically offer nowadays it's an EBITDA multiple. So whenever a corporate comes in and they buy 4 to 5 times multiple of the EBITDA, not percentage, but a multiple of the EBITDA. And so that's basically profits. But then they make you sign.
I knew what you meant.
You knew what I meant.
You clarified it.
It's tough to, explain EBITDA because a lot of people don't understand that. But in short terms, it's kind of like the profits. Well, they're going to give you 5 multiple max on a solo location. And then they're going to assign you on a contract. You got to work 5 years for them. So after 5 years, you basically just gave your practice to them because you gave them all the profits. And so you just turned it over. You got a payout, but now you got to work for a greedy corporate company that is going to drive you to the bone and change up all of your systems.
With new rules and systems, but you're still the same old guy that used to treat everybody your way.
Oh, yeah. You got to buy that. You got to use their supplies. It may be from China. You don't know where it's coming from, but these corporates are going to make sure that you actually, abide by their rules. And a lot of dentists, they regret what they did. And so, with having a group of practices, you can be worth more of like an 8 multiple. I know a guy in Mississippi, I mean, like I said, he sold several locations. And I mean, I think you can get, I think he got 6 or 7 or something like that. But like I said, you can get all into all that kind of stuff. But of course, with a group that has, SOPs and scalable operations, you're going to get higher return, on the value of it. But again, it's one of those things, if I like what I do, keep doing what I'm doing. And why would we ever sell to a corporate?
Do you like practicing dentistry?
I love it. And that's where it, kind of getting back into just the practice of dentistry. I actually brought some I was going to show you here.
Oh, whip it out.
Whip it out. I was 8 years old when I decided I want to be a dentist.
Really?
Never changed my mind. grew up on a cattle farm. That's a cow tooth that I pulled whenever I was 8 years old.
Really?
Yep.
Do you carry it every day?
I keep it in my office every day in my drawer there.
That's wild.
You don't want to touch it, do you?
Oh, I'll touch it, dude.
But no, I was actually like 8 years old, decided I wanted to be a dentist, and then I started practicing pulling teeth on the dead the cow skull, cow skulls that were laying around everywhere, and then I kept that one, and I've kept it ever since I was little. But
do you remember? I mean, it sounds like you vividly remember that.
I remember exactly where I was when I did it. But
was your dad talking you up or anything?
No. It was just one of those things. I had a screwdriver, went out there to a cow skull and dug it out and kept it in my pocket, and then remember that ever since. But
it's stamped on your brain.
I call it stubborn, call it what you want, but once I make my mind up, it don't change. And like I said, I was 8, and you can even go back in my 8th grade yearbook. I was still talking about me wanting to be a dentist when I grow up.
Dude, you manifested it, bro. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people don't realize the power of words.
No. Like I said, and that's the thing about it. If I speak it, I'm going to make it happen. Like I said, and it's part of accountability thing. Whenever I speak it, I feel like, oh gosh, they heard me say it. Now I got to do it. I'm a man of my word. So we got to do it.
What's the hardest part, like with your dentistry and all that, to scale, you feel like?
It's about taking operations and trying to repeat it over again. Yeah, that's actually, to me, has not been as difficult as some people think it is. I mean, you got to create the culture. You got to replicate the culture. If you create the culture and replicate the culture and make it a place where everybody wants to go and work, then it's not that you start bringing on good people that are in bad situations. They're working for a dentist that, they're like, man, he's, terrible, or he's grumpy or mean, or, like I said, it's just bad environment, drama. If you can create the culture, those people will try to find you. And
what do you do to create culture?
I mean, like I said, there's ways to actually make it more fun. We want, like I said, that Chick-fil-A dentistry mentality is, something that we push and drive. I'm big into profit sharing with my staff. We have all these kind of incentives and bonuses. Yeah, you have your hourly rate, but if we have great months, everybody's taking home extra. There's a way to actually.
Do you find that pushes them to?
Heck yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, if somebody comes in, somebody going to pay you an hourly. What does it matter if the owner's making more money? Right. But if we got a way to give back to them, the ones that are actually doing it, let's incentivize people. Let's make it fun and actually, give back.
Did you create those profit shares?
So we have different, ways we look at the clinic and, what the production and the collections and all that kind of stuff is. And we set tiers, so there's a way to, make an extra $100, $200, $300, $400 a month each person. Do
you do it individual location, or you guys?
Yeah, because my first 2 locations were distressed locations. My second 2 locations were startups where you build ground up, start with zero. So you got to the clinic's not going to be doing, as a startup, month 3, right, what it's doing, in a year. So we have to kind of scale those, keep the momentum going and keep the drive going. But like I said, those kind of little things are going to bring good employees, and it's going to bring, good work ethic.
Yeah, because that's smart. Because we're doing the same thing, and that's one thing I was unaware of. Is like, if you, no matter what, you reward everybody, then you create these silos of where, hey, dude, this gym may not do well, or this practice may not do well, but this one did. Mm-hmm. So this one's costing me money.
Yeah,
and this one made me a lot of money. But if I reward this one, you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Then the owner just went negative.
Yep.
Have you ever found yourself kind of getting in those predicaments? Because, dude, it's a tricky thing to implement.
We have, so far right now, we have kept everything completely separated out. Like, each one has their own entities. They don't really have an idea of what each other clinic is doing. We do have quarterly meetings where we bring all the office managers and doctors together, and we discuss kind of how each clinic is doing as a whole. But yeah, like I said, there's been times whenever you're trying to take a distressed clinic and turn it around, and you're having to me personally, I'm kind of the one having to take the profits off my good clinic here and try to support the other clinic. But over time, if you have a good dentist that actually wants to work and actually wants to produce, the clinic's not going to be negative, unless you're just doing some sort of like, not good spending or you're not collecting properly. So
you ever have to fire a dentist?
Yeah.
Seems tough.
Yeah. Because I mean, like I said, dentists, just like with you go to, try to scale everything, you kind of have that mentality that everybody's like you and they're not.
Do you carry that with you at home? I know I'm asking you another question because
come out like having to let people go.
Yeah, like if you got a location that doesn't have the culture, or you might have popped in and one of the new staff didn't know you and they didn't say hello. I will wear that on my sleeve for 2 weeks.
Yeah. The second location, once I got kind of my first location where I wanted it to, the second location, man, that one took a while to turn around, and I lost sleep for a year. I mean, and it was one of those things where I was still full-time working in Waynesboro.
You're full technician and entrepreneur.
I could even go to that clinic like once a month just because, I mean, I didn't even have the resources to get away and go over there. And then I'd be going over there trying to like run in and like, let's change this, go back. And then I'd be popping in, like just, checking in. And I'm like, oh gosh, it's not going like it needs to be going. And a lot of different factors there. But,
did you seek any like implementer help?
Yeah, no, that's whenever I started paying for the consultants. You have to hire people that know what they're doing, people that have actually been there, done that. And I went out and hired a consultant, and he was really good at changing the mentality of like, this is because at the time though, everybody had just done this whole like associate, commission kind of thing. And he changed the mentality on it. It was like, why don't you allow them to have equity? And I was like, never thought about it. And so that's what I'm saying, like somebody that had actually been there, done that. And so that's when we started creating the whole trial partnership, creating a way and, path forward. And then I started getting better dentists, better quality people that actually cared about the businesses, people that weren't afraid to go into some sort of debt, people that actually saw the vision, and that made it easier. But the first year of trying to just figure it out, and again, like I said, I'm one of those, I'm compulsive. I just jumped in, said I'll figure it out.
Right.
And I bought that clinic, another distressed clinic. I mean, it was less than $300K. People like nowadays, a good clinic, you're paying $1.5 million.
Right.
But, and like I said, the goal, once you get these clinics turned around, that's what they're worth. But, that first year, I bought that clinic July of 19. And then I had my son was born at 30 weeks, pre-eclamptic. My wife was pre-eclamptic, all that kind of stuff, like within like 3 to 4 months after of opening that. And so that we were in the NICU for like 2 months on top of like, me not being able to figure out what the heck's going on with this other clinic. It was a stressful time, stressful year. Like I said, that's life though. I look back now and think about how much I grew from that experience.
Did you ever have times where you just completely were confused and wondering where you were and what you were doing, if you were going to make it out?
And my wife, and honestly, she's been the backbone of all of this. To have a good wife that actually like supports you and can see that you're struggling. Ain't
it funny how they can be strong when you're weak?
I know it. And like I said, we have to have that kind of good support system, and again, I do want to take a minute there, like, because, if it wasn't for her and our faith and, believing that God had called me to like do something more because of the experiences that I had, you lean on those kind of things and you're actually like, I know this is tough, but there's a reason why I was put in this position. Because like, I mean, a lot of the situations that I've been in, and like I said, we may not have time to get in all of it, but I can go through every single location that I've done where it was like door opened. Every time I looked, I needed something, it was there. Like the only way that was even happening was the hand of God, like literally making that, a possibility. And it kind of gave me reassurance. That first year, there was times where I was like, I don't know what the heck, why is this not working? Like this should be easy. People do this all the time. And like I said, you hire consultants and all that, but it's still just having that belief and that faith that like somehow or another God's given me this ability that first 5 years of owning a practice, he's given me this ability and given me this drive and this mentality of like, he's going to see me, through this.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, about the time I got that second location kind of turned around, it wasn't even fully turned around. That's whenever I called Eli, our buddy, up at Jones, and I was like, let's do a third location. And my wife, of course, was like,
we're going to go through this again.
She was like, we're doing this again.
That's me every time I open a location.
And, she was like, all right, if you feel like this is what we need to do, then we're going to do it. But it also helped. It was in my wife's hometown, and she saw the need there. And so, that was in Wiggins, Mississippi. And, me and Eli, I called Eli up. And again, like I said, I'm all about partnerships. I'd never done a startup before. Startup, you're literally just like opening up a door with zero patience. And
did y'all build?
Yeah, we built out a unit. That's the only space that I don't own the real estate on. I begged that guy to sell me that real estate for, 4 years now. And he won't sell it to me. But one day I feel like he will.
Yeah. One day he'll sell it
I won't hound him enough till one day he's going to give it to me. But
he's going to give it to you.
Not
I
give
like
it to
that.
me. Yeah, I wish. But it was one of those things. I went straight down. I called Eli up and I said, let's do this together. He had just gotten out of the military. Military dentistry is not, what it all is cracked up to be. But he had just moved back, and me and Eli, you talk about meeting him in physics, but me and Eli were 18 when we met. He had a twin brother. I've got a twin brother. He was doing dentistry. Like I was doing dentistry. And so we took every class together for 4 years, we interviewed the same day, got the call the same day, went to dental school for 4 years. So, we were big buds. And my goal was, like, I'm a partner with Eli on this clinic. And then, which at the time he was working at another dental office. In my mind, I was like, if for some reason this goes south, he'll come in and, work the clinic. Well, we ended up getting a girl fresh out of dental school, never seen a day in a dental office in her life. And it was like, for some reason, we're like, I like her. We're going to put that girl to be the one to run this clinic. And she bossed up and like was so good that me and Eli sat back and was like, wow, like she is making this super easy on us. We don't even, we're not even having to like pull Eli in there to like save the day or anything. She's actually awesome. But we ran into a hurdle again. I think it was 4 or 5 months into opening that clinic. Things were just kind of get rolling. And her husband passed away from COVID. And so that, set things back and, kind of, of course, it's worse. I mean, like I said, you're sitting there thinking like, why would God do this to her, and her husband had been through all these years of dental school with her. And then, she had experienced this. And so we really, at the time wanted to allow her, an equity ownership in the clinic. And so just because, like I said, she's bossed up, and like I said, that clinic down in Wiggins is like amazing. I mean, we've got and that's the thing about it, man, we got great teams everywhere, great people. And so that clinic, we just doubled the size of it. We went from 4 ops in that unit that guy had. The business next door closed down, so we just doubled the size of the business. Because we had people waiting outside to get in.
Wow.
Yeah. But like I said, when you don't own the real estate, you're stuck. You don't have any space.
That feeling, yep.
You drop $400K, building out a dental office, and you're stuck because you ain't got more chairs.
I might have to get in dentistry, bro. I mean, it sounds like the same exact numbers to build out a gym or a dentistry.
Yeah, dude. Like I said, I mean, but like I don't know anything about gyms and the profitability and
I don't know, man.
Margins.
I'm looking at you in this jacket, bro. You know a little bit about.
Dude, this is like one of like 2 jackets that I own. So I need
probably because you can't find one that fits, bro.
Dude, I'm getting too big, man. So,
Jack, dude.
I'm still a huge fitness person too. I count the macros. I like literally. I have to work out 7 days a week doing something, but. I was a big CrossFitter for years. Still am. Got my own garage gym at the house that I do, kind of like you do.
Right.
But But I'm one of those like, let me get me 15 minutes of straight misery, kill myself here, go stretch it out for 10 minutes.
Way, dude.
And
so many people
on.
think they got to work out 2 hours. I'm like, if you get in there and hustle for 15, 20 minutes just to get that energy, get aligned with the source, God.
Yep.
Like you're Gucci the rest of the day.
That's where, like I said, every morning, wake up, go right out there, get about 15 minutes of just straight, something tough. To me, that sets the mentality for the rest of the day. You conquered something first thing that morning. You know what I mean? Like you literally got up, did what other people aren't doing, put yourself through something tough, got through it, go over. Now we're old, got to stretch. Used to never stretch. Now I got to stretch. And then pick my Bible up, do my reading for the day, listen to, my Bible recap or some kind of message.
Do you work out and then read the Bible, or do you read the Bible first and then work out?
No, I'm one of those, like, I'm going to work out first. Just because, get the blood flow, kind of get the mindset, the energy right. And then, like I said, then I sit down, have my Bible, and my church has a whole, complete reading plan set up. So every day we have a chapter or 2 chapters to read, and then our preacher actually does an entire 10-minute summary of it after it on YouTube, and so you can kind of get a lesson after that. But yeah, like I said, after kind of doing all that working up, I've got to take 3 deep breaths, just try to calm the mentality, and then you're doing your prayer, and then you're going right into it. But
do you go back into being a dad and get the kids to school, or how do you?
Right after that, you're turning straight into dad mode.
Right, it's same, dude. Some days I'm like, God, should I go to work right now? But I just go in there and fire up the
I'm trying to, and sometimes I'm writing that last bit of my reading, and my boy, I can hear the feet steps coming down the stairs. I'm like, oh gosh, I got to get this through.
Dude, that's so funny. I battle this every day.
Yeah, I got to get up earlier, like you.
Yeah.
So that's what I was, telling your wife earlier, though, is that still being that full technician, seeing patients. I mean, because now, when I go in, we're seeing, 35, 40 patients a day. I need 8 hours. I got to get 8 hours sleep. I just can't make myself go to bed as early as you. But try to wind down a little bit at night after getting the kids down. But I'm doing good getting up at 5:30. And then hitting that 15-minute gym, 10-minute stretch, 20-minute Bible reading.
It's all about results, dude. You're getting it in quick, and that's good. I mean, I sit around a lot.
Do you?
Well, I'll walk my driveway and walk around the pool and just pray.
Yeah.
And then I go work out. I drink coffee. It may make you cringe.
Yeah, no, I've got
looking at those pearly whites, man. I don't know if they've ever seen coffee.
No, I'm a coffee addict, dude. I just got some good whitening. Yeah. So we like I said, it's definitely. I don't even get coffee until after all of that.
Really?
I don't even touch it. It's I've got to quit the energy drinks, but like I said, that's kind of my thing. Is later those loaded teas. I don't know if you've ever had any of those.
Well, you're in all these small towns, dude. They're everywhere.
They are everywhere. And you talking about make you get up and go. When my staff gets one, they all ready to work. They running. But
that's why they like you so much. You walking in with them trays of teas.
I don't bring the trays in, but I know whenever they going out to get it, like I said, there's trays every day of them teas.
You hand them your card.
Some days I will cover it, but it got expensive for a while. It's
like $10 a piece, bro.
I was looking, I was like, man, we have such a good production day when everybody has a tea, and I do take them out of lunch a ton, and I do cover a lot of stuff. But the tea thing, every now and then I'll cover them, but most of the time they're just doing it on their own free will.
How do you man, because that's something I battle with is how do you pop in the locations, be the technician, still do the going out to eat, building the culture, being the example.
It's exhausting.
I bet.
But again, I've got a good team, and that's what after the 3rd location, when I got ready to open the 4th location, and that was in Petal where I live, and I was actually able to get Dr. Racy, which was in dental school with me and Eli. She's my partner there. But and then she had 10 years experience. So that one, no brainer, easily partnered with her. Clinic, people loved her. She left corporate and started doing big things. But I did invest in regional managers, people that are actually going to be in the clinics all the time and I had to get a company car, all this kind of stuff. That's whenever it turned into like, I can't run this many clinics and be in the mouth.
So did they float, or you have one at each location?
So they float.
Right.
Yeah. One of them, like we do per diem with her car, and then I did a company car for the other one. But they, we're on the phone. Wednesdays is my admin day. Like today, like I said, it's admin day. Usually we're having some sort of meeting. We're getting together, talking about what they found at all the other clinics, and then what we need to implement, and then, send them out. They're straight up soldiers, man. Like they are awesome. One of them actually is the first office manager that I had. When I went to Waynesboro, I told you I had 3 employees.
Mm-hmm.
She was the office manager, the assistant, the everything.
Right.
And, basically my uncle, whenever he sold me that practice, he said, you do whatever you gotta do to keep that one. She is highly intelligent. And so, she has been, I call her my work mom. Like literally, she has taken care of me since day one. And that's when, like I said, we moved her to regional manager. And then it was a load on just her trying to do everything. And then that's whenever I went and had to hire another regional manager. And she's actually like president of the Mississippi chapter of all office managers and all this kind of, she's top notch too. She's completely, came in, turned, every little EBITDA thing that we were, calculating all the time. She flipped the switch, too. And like I said, the 2 of them together is a team. I just feel like some days I'm sitting back, I say, y'all just let me know what's going on. Y'all got it.
Did they only focus on things going wrong, or do they bring out the good too?
No, it's one of those things, there's always something that needs to be addressed.
Always.
And they have to like go take care of that because I'm still over here in the mouth, but the thing with them though is like they're really good at finding the avenues and like, hey, we're spending too much here. Let's go. They're negotiating, network fees with our PPOs. They're negotiating supply costs with my reps. They're the people that's having to do all of that because now that we're in a group, we have a little bit more power in actually negotiating. And so they take on all of that. And you get insurance credentialing, all this kind of mess of, it's paperwork on top of paperwork.
I just feel like with us and like all our locations, we really get caught up in the problems a lot. Mm-hmm. And it's like we never talk about the good stuff.
Yeah.
And the more you talk about the bad, it seems the more they grow.
Yeah.
Do you find that?
Yeah. It's you have to take the time to try to, sit back, look at the positives. It's definitely, if you get caught up in the negatives all the time, like you say, you're going to lose sleep, you're going to drive yourself crazy. But
that's where I've been for a while.
I'm such a numbers person. And I don't know if you do with your gyms, but with us, there's several dental softwares out there that you can actually purchase monthly, whatever, and it incorporates in. Basically, all I got to do is pull up my iPad and I can see every clinic data. Like we have like 600 KPIs that I can look at every little thing going on in every single clinic at any moment. And that way we can address like, hey, this collection is getting down to 95%. This collection is getting down to 90%. Our goal is 98 to 100. What do we got to do to get this back up? So, you have several different ways and avenues of trying to focus on the positives and moving forward with that and not get so caught up and bogged down in like the little things. Because, you still got, we've got 32 employees, all women with kids, having kids. Marriage, moving, it's constantly, like you said, you lose a good team member, then it's like, oh gosh, what are we going to do? But, then, we got people like your guy over here that, will actually help us recruit. And we've been able to find good talent. But like I said, it's easy to get bogged down in like this, once you put out a fire here, you turn around, there's another fire.
Right.
But it's fun. That's what we live for, right?
Right. No joke. So whenever you would go open a location, I get asked this all the time. What's the first thing you're looking for? Is it the town?
Demographics,
yeah. Population,
definitely
competition.
Yep. There's a lot of factors that go into it, and like I said, after
is that just like your gut intuition and how you?
Yes,
that's what I started.
There's a big gut intuition that you got to have.
Bankers hate it when I walk in there and say, "Man, I've had a gut feeling here 10 years, dude."
Don't get me started on bankers. I am.
Oh, we're gonna get started on bankers.
God. I called you last week. I was like, dude, these bankers are driving.
I'm surprised
nuts.
though. You're wealthy, bro. You're Randy. You got 5.
That's what everybody thinks.
Dental practices. Money falls out the sky.
Yeah, sure.
Everything you touch turns to gold, right?
Sure. Yeah.
People hand you money.
Like that. You would think. You would think.
But first, do you get the real estate locked down after you like a town, or do you get the money locked down?
I try to get the real estate as soon as possible.
But then you got to go get the funds and make it work together.
No,
That's where it gets tricky.
Yep.
And so I want to hear your perspective on that.
No, I mean, first off, demographics. You have to look in the town. I'd like go back and look at it, but I mean, you're looking at how many dentists are serving, how many people, and does the population, going to allow for another dentist to come in there? We are very high, Medicaid, Medicare practices that, are in these rural towns. So I start looking at, who am I competing against whenever I go into that town? And if there's like one other old doc over there that's, on his last leg and he's taking Medicaid and, he's probably doing like my uncle, seeing 10 patients a day. Like, that's the towns we want to go into. We want to market, and bring those people in that are underserved.
Have you ever contacted one of them and say, look, man, what's your plan here?
I tried, like when we went to Wiggins, we talked to one guy because we were just thinking about maybe just buying his practice. And of course, everybody thinks they're worth way more than what they are. And that's whenever it kind of led to like, let's go do a startup.
They say that's the biggest transfer of wealth now, is because all the baby boomers are retiring.
Yep.
And they have no way to sell their business.
Yep.
They don't keep up with their financials like you. They don't know what they're worth.
No.
Their kids don't want their business.
No.
So if you could go in with the right plan, you can literally take over these businesses for 5%.
Yeah, a lot of times, it comes down to like you start buying charts, or you end up, we've done one deal with one dentist of like a production purchase. Basically, like if her patients come in our door, we pay her a percentage off of that production. So there was no purchase of assets, no purchase of anything. It's just like, if you get your patients coming our door, we'll give you a kickback off of what comes in. And that was the acquisition. So I don't even count that as like a, buying a practice. It was more of like a merger.
So you just didn't want their practice?
No, it was like one of those things. I'd actually looked at it before and was thinking about ways to kind of turn it around. But then I ended up doing a big real estate deal with that first consultant that I hired out of Texas. We can get all into that. I mean, I bought an entire 50,000 square foot shopping center. And I was like, I'm going to put a dental office in this instead of going and, putting it in, the older dentist office. But like I said, there's a million different ways to shake it, and a lot of times you don't even want to touch some of these older practices because the cultures are so down and distressed and people are so set in their ways, and then you're bringing in new technology and new everything.
That's a big one, because just like people get bad habits, businesses have a paradigm too with bad habits.
Yep.
That's another question. Just like with your newer clinics, do you see them rise to the top way quicker than your older ones because you can implement new beliefs from the start?
I don't even know if I want to do acquisitions anymore.
See, that's what freaks me out. But you got all these gurus saying buy the businesses, but in a sense, they're saying buy them and let them do what they're doing.
Yeah,
keep the people in place, just like all these
but if
acquisitions.
They're not doing good, then what are you doing?
But that's the hardest thing to me, is to go in and break all these old beliefs. And businesses get them quicker than a person.
Yeah, and and that's what I actually was trying to buy a clinic last year, and it was a good clinic, very good clinic. And I mean, you're going to pay for those good clinics. I mean, you're talking, $1.2, $1.3 million for a good clinic. And, it fell through. And, looking back, I was like, God had his hand on me there, because that, you only got so much debt you can take on for the banks start shuttering. And that's where, like I said, you get me talking about these banks. They don't see the things that I see and the visions that I see. They start looking at like, oh, well, your income to debt ratio here and all this. And I was like, well, part of it's because I have partners.
We're growing,
and we're growing fast. And so, they think, oh, they're too risky. I said, well, what part of my business looks risky whenever you're running a 25% EBITDA? Profits are great. Like, this is, a great model. And So, anyways, like I said, you can pay a ton of money for a good acquisition and keep it rolling, have very little profits because you're paying the note on it.
Right.
Or you can go buy a distress clinic, stress yourself out trying to get it turned around, see the profits later. Or you can go do a startup and start off, minimal, just fill it out just a little bit, hire just enough staff, make it profitable day one, and then slowly grow that into an asset that's worth that. So everybody's like, oh, it's more risky to do, a startup. But in my business, everybody's got teeth, until they don't, and then we're there for them whenever they don't have teeth. We do a ton of dentures and partials, but like in my business, there's always going to be a need, for a good dentist.
Even through a pandemic, I think you probably.
Oh yeah, now like dentistry is one, and that's where really, private equity and all these kind of people, were already, getting into dentistry. But whenever, you go through the pandemic and COVID and you don't see, a major drop in business because the business still there, that's whenever a lot of like the corporate, private, they were like, oh, now,
it's recession proof.
Yeah, it's recession proof. That's what they say. They're like, oh, it's recession proof. But then the interest rates all changed and everybody started kind of like, backing off a little bit, on so much of the buying because, this group would buy this group, get bigger, and then sell to this group. And it was just one big snowball effect. And then they get ready to go to sell to market. And all of a sudden, interest rates change and all this, and they can't get rid of it like they thought they could.
Have you found like the more you grow, the easier it gets, or you find yourself pushing the threshold every time?
More confident, and like I said, and it makes it easier whenever like you've been there, done that.
But like money wise,
as far as like,
because that's me, I'm never scared. I wouldn't do it, but like, I raise the bar. I make them nicer, bigger, bigger towns. Real estate's more, and I just find myself, the money grows, but like I don't like open, not like dang dog. I push this one to the limit.
Yeah, no, we definitely. That's the thing about what's crazy in dentistry though is a lot of like the competition that we have in the rural towns never try to make things nicer. They never try to so if we go in there and we completely build out a nice brand new office with all the new technology, town's never seen that. So, we already push those limits, like you said. And, there's always trying to find a way to get things nicer because we want to provide for our patients. But it's like one of those things that like, whenever I bought Waynesboro, there was blue carpet, pink wallpaper. I moved pictures off the wall and they were still like a square on there where they hadn't moved since 1983.
Right.
Nothing's ever updated. Nothing's never changed, and it's old school. I was actually not even trained to like dip x-rays, and I had to go into, work 3 months dipping x-rays, try to read a cavity. And it was just like, we got to make changes, So we start off pretty much right now, like, when we open up a clinic, we're going to have already the nicest in there. And then two, within reasonable. We also have to remember we're starting day one with 0 patients. We can get nicer as we get, more. But nowadays with the digital technology of scanners and all this kind of stuff in dentistry, all that putty impressions that everybody does, like, I mean, it's kind of going out the door. And I mean, AI right now, there's capabilities and ways, and that's something I want to eventually probably put in my clinics is you can take those digital x-rays, pop it on a screen, and AI will tell the patient where all the cavities are. The dentist doesn't even have to do it anymore. Like, it literally outlines out where they need something fixed. And, it takes out that, oh my gosh, that's a young dentist. AI just told you where it is. I said, it's getting nuts. And, I think it's crazy. Mark Zuckerberg, his dad's a dentist. And they just, I want to think last few weeks or something like that. I have to look it up. First robotic dental procedure done. Actual, like I said, it could be in 15 years. I ain't got a job. But again, I still think there's those people that they don't want no robot coming at them with a burr in their hand.
You still got to run the robots.
I think you got to sedate them though. I mean, no, it's like perform the procedure on tooth number 29. And this little arm that comes over and actually does the procedure while the patient's supposed to just sit there and let it happen. And so I don't know how that robot's supposed to know whether or not it's, are they numb, feeling it? Like, I got so many questions.
Yeah.
I'll find out later, but hope I ain't got to run into competing against that in the future. But if it does, I'll be buying robots.
So what's your day look like whenever you're out from practicing and you're playing CEO entrepreneur? What are your hopes for that?
So you talking about like whenever I get to the point of where I'm backing off more out of the patient smile, and that's hopefully going to happen in the next couple months. I've got a great husband and wife, strong Christian couple that are moving down to Laurel that are going to come support that Waynesboro practice. That's my baby. That's what I grow. And and like I said, it's one of those God things that I've been sitting there tight for five ops, 10 years. And the day that the husband, we actually just accidentally sat beside each other at a conference and got to talk, and he was about to graduate dental school. And the day that he signed his contract, I told him, like, I can't take your wife on. I ain't got no room. I'll turn you loose in here. But his wife needed a job too. And I was like, I'll find somewhere to plug her. But the day he signed the contract, the lot behind me came up for sale. Like, soon as he was, ready to come in and start working and his wife needed a job too, I sat there for 10 years hoping that house and lot behind me would come up for sale so I could expand my building because I'm so tight. Now I had 2 dentists that were willing to come and work for me, and God gave me the ability to buy that lot and expand that building to make more ops for, both of them to come on and actually, make a change. And like I said, that's just one of the many stories that I got. But like even that, you sit back and you're like, I had nothing to do with that. That was something completely that, he took over for me and opened that door. And again, that just gives me more affirmation of like, I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Right.
He's pushing me more to actually get into opening more clinics, helping these areas that are, don't have the dentists that they need and stuff like that. And so we're going to keep doing what we're doing and glorifying him in all of it. So
will you still practice just for passion reasons?
Oh yeah, that's what I've got a thing every day that on my phone that reminds me to look at goals, and I've got these goals set up. So every day I've got this goal that's set up, and one of those goals is to practice 2 days a week as I desire. Go in. I may not be running 3 or 4 chairs like I do now. I may just do 1 chair, but I can still do the dentistry that I love because that's my passion, and still got those great patients that I want to see. But, don't lose the skill that he also gave me the ability to have too.
Right.
And so, I feel like that's a part of me that's going to be hard to ever turn off. But, may one day get to the point of where, this back's hurting,
Right.
I may want to back off, and then I'll still have, the income coming in from running, however many practices we get to.
Well, you're a smart guy, dude, because a lot of people, we grow up and, we fantasize being a dentist or a doctor. And what happens if you go skiing and break an arm?
That's,
and you're still self-employed, even though you have your own dentistry.
That's been in the back of my head, for the last 5 years because I've been taking on so much more debt, taking on more clinics, buying real estate. And, these clinics do have income, but my predominant income is off my hands. It's my hands, and if something happens there and I can't produce, fortunately, I have gotten to a point now where like I could back off passive income and still support my lifestyle. I'm not a big like glitzy glamour kind of guy. Like I said, I may have like 2 jackets, but it's one of those things where like, got a nice lifestyle and I, want to provide for my family. But I just always wanted to be in the situation because, like I said, my uncle needing disability and going down and all that. And it happens with a lot of dentists. Burnout's a big thing in dentistry. But, I wanted the ability to where, like, hey, if something happens to me, my family's taken care of. And that's something, like I said, a lot of people I wish they would look more into. You can't be the technician all the time.
I think that's another avenue you can take, man.
Yep.
It's helping other dentists realize that and become aware of it and create the systems to get themselves out of there if need be.
Yeah. And, that may be something one day, I thought about that. If I ever did, back off completely, turning more into a consultant, being somebody that actually, may want to hire me and my team to come in and turn things around in the clinic and, like I said, we have a management company. That's what me and the two ladies that are my regional managers, that's its own entity, own LLC. It's a payment that's made to run that, individual company. And it could be something that we end up taking that, with our team.
Do you have that structured in this state?
Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, it's negotiated out with every clinic, a percentage of the practice is going to go toward the management company for those regional managers in order to make sure that everything is being run off of the Magnolia Smiles brand.
Do you pay yourself out of the management company?
Honestly, by the time, I tell you, I probably should, but like I said, by the time you pay for a car, pay for per diem, pay, good salaries for the, right now at 4 clinics, there's not really much left, have me any kind of income. Maybe if we got, 7 to 10 locations, there would be a little extra for me to have a little income, to step in and help that with. But, I'm also not trying to run in and take so much from each clinic saying, oh, you got to give it to the brand, and the management company. I want them to be successful, but, I want them to see your percentage that you're paying this management company is actually returning your investment, because this clinic is working in a group now. And we're able to negotiate. We're able to actually have help. Those 2 regional managers, if we have a down assistant or something like that, they can pop in there. They can do the same thing. So you don't lose production that day because they're available.
Yeah. We just did the same thing, but we formed ours in Wyoming, but that's our management company now.
How'd you form it in Wyoming?
Just this, you can't pierce the veil.
Yeah.
You don't have to live there. There's no income tax. And I'm an S Corp. Yeah. So I'm getting double taxed right now.
Yeah.
So I can just pay myself out of the management company and be taxed once.
I need to be writing this down. I got to talk to my CPA.
So I'm doing a video on it later today. My wife's the guru on it.
Yeah.
I may be a C Corp, dude. I might have botched that.
Yeah.
She's probably laughing right now if she watches this. But anyway.
That's why we got people to handle that for us. Exactly.
Right. I don't really have a whole lot of interest. I find it fascinating, and she has a passion for it.
Yeah.
But so many people don't even know how to form an LLC.
No.
They'll pay internet $500, and she can literally do it in 2 minutes.
It's like $50 maybe.
Yeah,
tops.
$50.
Yeah. You can pay $50 and you've got an organized business.
Right.
Completely taxable by the government and everything. Like I said, it's nothing to it. But again, I'm too lazy. I'll just, pay my guy to go do it. But
like at the rate you're going right now, how many locations do you want to open, or could you open per year?
I'm just trying to get on your level, man.
See, I keep pushing the threshold though.
Yeah.
My last club cost me $1 million, and I started it.
Yeah, that's what happens, man. Is that you end up? When I first started, I was like, I'm gonna go to 3 locations. Did 3. Wow. Now I'm figuring this out. Let's go to 5. Be the goal. But, more and more I sit back and I start trying to do the numbers on what's it going to take for me to live, because I don't want to ever lose sight of my family, my faith and all that. When you start talking I'm going to go here, 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 and then
Am I still going to take my kids to school?
Exactly.
That's the questions I ask. Will I be home, for dinner and play with the kids, and will I take them to school? And if I can't do that, I'm not doing it.
If we lose sight of what's most important in life, because at the end of the day, we're all going to be dead and buried, and we're going to be meeting Jesus face to face.
That's right.
So, I do have an aspect of me that's let's push this limits while I'm here. But at the end of the day, I don't want to be remembered off these clinics. I want my kids to remember me as being present.
That's right.
And there's been times, I literally, will be going through something struggle of, business, something, a lot of times when I go to open up a new clinic, I get so pulled away in the mind that even my wife's like, hey, come back, you're staring off. Or I'll even have my little girl who's 3 come get in my lap. And it's I blink and I look down. It's I didn't even know my little girl just crawled in my lap because I'm thinking so much about my next move.
That's funny, dude. I do the same thing.
And when that happens, it's just okay, reel it back in. Think about what's important here. At the end of the day, are we doing what we're called to do? And are we taking care of the ones around us that love us and actually are supporting us? And so when people ask me all the time, how many locations do you want to get? Because they're oh, you can go, 20 locations. I'm like, why? I know, the entrepreneurial, financial money side of me is yeah, let's do it all. Because I mean, I don't do anything halfway. Like, I mean, I'm on all in. I even look at where I'm at now, and everybody's like, "You do jump all in?" I said, "I don't feel like it. I'm not there yet." And so, I look at, I think 7 locations is going to be a good, happy medium, for me to run quality. I don't want quantity. You can get 20 locations of quantity and have poor SOPs and, my thing
mediocrity.
Mediocrity. And, and still, have a huge payday. If somebody was come in and buy that group, that's fine. But my thing is that I'm going to stick Magnolia Smiles brand on these clinics. And if I start losing that quality that I'm providing, then I don't want to do it no more. Like, there's no way I want to go open up 10 clinics and I can't run them properly. And that's why a lot of people jump into like, how fast can I grow and all this. I've been very methodical of trying to do just one every other year almost.
That's very comfortable for me to do.
That
requires no stress of me to do one every 2 years. Yeah. But then like the new me is like, dude, you were doing that 15 years ago. Why ain't you need to be doing 2 a year.
I follow, a lot of dental CEO people and podcasts. And, there's even a group of 5 guys that grew to like 70 practices, like within 2 years or 3 years, something like that. It's crazy what they did. I've like mentally couldn't do that. But they even like on their podcast says like, it's so much more beautiful of a journey and a process to whenever you're 50 years old and you look back and you're sitting there with 10 locations
that you organically grew,
still
present with your family,
and you actually made the move at the right time instead of forcing it, and then actually developing something that's is profitable, it's valuable, you got equity in it that you can make the decision like, do you want to sell this or do you want to actually maybe pass it down to your kid if your kid wants to take on that kind of lifestyle.
That's the beautiful thing about faith, man. When you operate fully from faith,
Absolutely.
You let it grow organically. It's illogical.
Yeah.
You don't really have a reason why you open 1 in 3 years, but it just happened that way beautifully. Mm-hmm. Or you may have popped 2 in 2 years, if
the
everything
opportunity
lined up.
has to be there.
Right.
Can't force it.
Well, that's you causing the effect in all these small towns and not looking for a cause and effect.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
You're not waiting for something to happen, then I'm going to do this. It's like, hey, man, I'm going to go in here and cause this to happen.
Exactly.
And I hear it, dude. You're passionate about providing the quality.
Big time, dude. Like, it's one of those things that if you lose sight of that, man, like it's just pointless to me. It's pointless to me to, and two, I look at it as, in order for me to be that family man, I need to open up clinics that are within an hour drive. I got people like saying, hey, there's a North Mississippi here or, one on the coast. And I'm like, no, like I can't manage that from afar like I need to. Like I can't pour into that place like I need to. I'd rather do startups with everything within an hour's drive of me. And that way I can be at those places and present and my regional managers can cover them. And I'm not killing myself trying to get to the other side of the state.
I'll see you consulting soon, man. Sitting in your beautiful home office and playing with your kids and
that'd be nice.
Telling people all the mistakes you made and what not to do and how to do it right and save 15 years off their life and tons of money. And
that would be fulfilling,
And you've done it in the worst place in America.
Yeah.
For finances and
yeah,
rural and health. I mean, dude, we're just bottom of the bucket. You can do it anywhere.
I hate it when people say we're the armpit of the South. I'm like, no, like there's actually beauty in where we're at right now, and the actual.
And you don't. I mean, ability. It just goes to show if you got the right mindset, you can do anything, anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, you can't run around with that victimized mindset of like, this is not going to happen from where I'm at, where I'm raised. I mean, I don't know how completely you were raised, but I mean, like I said, I was on a cow farm with a workaholic family that, it's...
You put them 22s on your truck in college, though.
Oh, gosh, dude.
Can we talk about that? Your dad probably is like, you going to that boy's podcast?
You know what? That hit me like 2 days ago, and I said, I wonder if Paul remembers selling me those 22s on...
I don't know if I should feel guilty or proud of you.
All I know is I couldn't drive in between 40 and 45 miles per hour without my whole truck shaking. But They look good, and I rocked them thing. I paid $1,000. You sold them to me for $1,000.
I don't even remember.
Yeah, I remember. It was $1,000. And in my mind, I was like, this is a heck of a deal. And again, it was one of those situations where I was going to drive them for a little bit and turn around and sell them because that was my mindset. Yeah. And I wasn't taking any less than $1,600, and nobody offered it to me. And I think my dad was more disappointed than me than any other moment in my life when I rolled up in that Ford FX4 four-door, truck with 22s and street tires.
Yep.
And yeah, I got to tell him, I was like, man, you really got so many of them rims. That's the guy that's got me on a podcast right now. But
if you still had them, I'd buy them back from you.
I sold them for $800. I drove them for like 2 years, sold them $800. It wasn't terrible, but
dude, I paid so ridiculous for those things, and I traded a 30-06 for them.
Oh gosh!
And we were in the middle of pedal, and this dude gets the 30-06 out the case and shoots a tree in the middle of town.
That's pedal.
And then I think I gave him $1,800 too.
Yeah.
I mean, he raped me, dude.
Yeah.
All right, dude. I got some funny questions I want to ask you. No more than 3 answers for a word. Quick as possible. You ready?
Yeah, we got it.
Do you eat candy?
Chocolate.
Do you drink coffee?
Every day.
When's the last time you had a cavity?
Oh, probably high school.
Do you have your wisdom teeth?
Nope. Got those out.
Do you floss every day?
Yes, actually, yeah.
How many times a day do you brush your teeth?
2, maybe 3.
When's the last time you had a toothache?
I don't even know what a toothache feels like. I see enough of it, but I have no idea what it feels like.
How many times a year do you get your teeth cleaned?
It's supposed to be twice, but it's crazy. I get past due.
Last and final, do you carry a toothbrush with you?
You know what is crazy? I work in an office that has like 1 million toothbrushes in it, so I never really have to fully carry one. And like I'm literally at a toothbrush all day, every day, and so I don't have to carry one. But yeah, I do when I go on vacation, which is a good thing. I hope you do too.
I do. Randy Jones, dude, thanks for coming.
Yeah, man.
You're a heck of a businessman, a father, a husband. It's a lot to you, and it seems like you got it all in order, man.
And just trying to live day to day and make sure that, I glorify God in the middle of it. And then getting to talk with people like you, it makes a huge difference because, that mentality is hard to find. And the fact that, we were buddies back in the day and, we've gone our separate ways and, we can now kind of come back and kind of talk about the same struggle is beautiful.
It's cool. I want to come see your house. You're just through the woods from me, too.
I'm like 15 minutes from you. So, yeah.
And I want you to come back and talk about being Mr. CEO.
Let's do it.
That practice is dentistry for, satisfaction.
I can get all nerdy on the statistics and the data and stuff like that. And like you said, it's fun.
Well, cool, dude. Well, thanks for coming. Until next time, brother.
Yeah, man. Glad to be here. Glad you had me.